Amelia Walker sat at the long mahogany dining table, its glossy surface reflecting the golden chandelier above. To anyone looking in from the outside, her life seemed perfect. The only daughter of Richard and Margaret Walker, a powerful tycoon, and a celebrated philanthropist, Amelia lived in a mansion filled with marble floors, luxury cars, and every comfort imaginable. Yet inside her heart she felt a constant emptiness. From childhood, people had admired her beauty, her polished manners, her family's influence. But as she grew into adulthood, Amelia discovered that admiration often came with conditions. Her friends envied her lifestyle more than they valued her as a person. The men who courted her seemed fascinated by her father's empire, not by her dreams or her laughter. That evening, as she pushed her plate away, Amelia listened half-heartedly to her mother's polished voice. Margaret spoke of charity galas, luncheons, and the names of young men from powerful families. Amelia's mind wandered, heavy with the thought that her life was being written for her without her consent. Finally, she spoke. "Mother, Father," she said, her voice soft but steady, "I need to leave. I want to live away from all this, from the wealth, the status, the expectations. I need to discover who I am, and whether someone can love me for me, not for the Walker name." Margaret's fork clattered against her plate. "Leave? Amelia, you are a young woman. The world is not safe for someone like you. You have everything you could ever need right here. Why throw it away?" But Amelia pressed on. "That's the problem, Mother. Everything has been given to me. None of it is earned. None of it is real. I want a chance to struggle, to live simply, to be seen as just Amelia, not Amelia Walker, the heiress." Her father leaned back in his chair, studying her carefully. Richard had always been stern, a man whose words carried the weight of business empires. Yet he had also watched his daughter grow restless. "If you leave," he said slowly, "you may find hardship, even betrayal. But perhaps you will also find truth. If this is truly what you want, Amelia, then I will not stop you." Margaret gasped. "Richard, you cannot encourage this madness." But Richard shook his head. "She is strong, Margaret. Stronger than we think. We must let her go." Tears welled in Amelia's eyes as relief washed over her. She reached across the table, touching her father's hand. "Thank you. I promise I will be careful. And if I fail, I will return, and I will accept whatever life you wish for me. But first I must try." That night, Amelia packed a small suitcase. Gone were the designer gowns and glittering jewelry instead. She folded plain dresses, modest shoes, and a single notebook to record her journey. As dawn broke, she stood by the mansion gates, her heart racing. Her mother's worried figure appeared at the balcony, calling her name. Her father stood beside Margaret, expression unreadable, yet his subtle nod told Amelia he believed in her. With one last look at the life she was leaving behind, Amelia boarded a bus to an unknown town, her heart trembling with both fear and hope. For the first time in her life, she was free. The bus rumbled to a stop hours later, and Amelia stepped down with her small suitcase. The air was different here, not perfumed with manicured gardens and polished marble, but alive with the smell of roasted food, the sound of chatter, and the rhythm of ordinary life. For the first time, no one glanced twice at her. To them, she was just another young woman arriving in town. She found a one-room apartment tucked between weathered buildings. The space was tiny, with peeling walls and a creaky bed. But to Amelia it felt strangely liberating. There were no servants waiting to draw her curtains, no polished chandeliers, no expectations pressing in. It was hers, plain and imperfect, but real. The next morning she walked the streets, determined to earn her living. Her savings would not last long, and if she was to prove she could live as anyone else, she needed work. The laughter of children and the cries of market sellers filled her ears as she wandered past fruit stalls and busy shops. Then she noticed a modest diner on the corner. Its sign read simply, Karen's Diner. Through the open door drifted the scent of warm bread and home-cooked meals. Wooden chairs scraped the tiled floor. Customers laughed over plates, and a plump woman with a bright apron moved from table to table with practiced ease. Something about the place called to Amelia. She hesitated at the door before stepping inside. "Good afternoon," she said nervously, approaching the counter. "I'm looking for work. Do you need help?" The woman turned, eyes kind yet shrewd. "I'm Karen. This isn't easy work, young lady. Long hours, heavy trays, customers who won't always be polite. Can you handle that?" Amelia straightened her shoulders. "Yes, I'll do my best." Karen studied her, noticing her neat clothes and soft hands that had never known a hard day's work. But there was determination in her eyes. With a small nod, Karen tied an apron around her waist. "Then you start now." By evening, Amelia was exhausted. Her arms ached from carrying trays, her back throbbed from bending to clean tables, and her feet burned from standing all day. Yet when she finally sank into bed, sweat dampened and sore, she smiled. For once her day had been shaped not by luxury, but by effort, her effort. Days turned into weeks, and Amelia began to blend in. Customers called her the new waitress, not the heiress. She laughed with the children who spilled juice, learned to balance 3 plates on one arm, and even managed to earn her first wages. The coins jingled in her palm like a trophy, far more meaningful than the allowance her parents once handed her. One evening, as she wiped a table near the window, Amelia glanced out at the busy street. Vendors shouted their last sales, children chased each other, and people hurried home. She pressed a hand to her chest, whispering to herself, "This is what it feels like to be free." But deep down, she wondered, could this freedom also lead her to the love she had been searching for? Or was this only the beginning of another lesson yet to come? Amelia's days at Karen's Diner soon fell into a steady rhythm. She rose before dawn, tied on her apron, and spent long hours serving customers who never once asked about her past. The ache in her muscles was now familiar, almost comforting. For the first time in her life, she felt like an ordinary young woman, and that thought gave her peace. It was on one of those weary evenings, while she scrubbed a table by the counter, that a voice startled her. "Need a hand with that?" Amelia looked up to see a tall man standing nearby, his shirt streaked with dust and his hands rough from labor. He had a warm smile that lit up his face, and his easy manner made him seem approachable. "I'm fine," she said politely, straightening up. "I'm Thomas," he introduced himself, offering his hand. "I work construction down the road. I stop by here sometimes for dinner. You must be new." Amelia hesitated before shaking his hand. "Amelia, I just started a few weeks ago." From that day on, Thomas became a regular at the diner. He always chose a seat near her section, striking up conversation whenever she passed by. He asked about her day, teased her gently about balancing too many plates, and sometimes helped her carry a heavy tray when Karen wasn't looking. His attention felt different from the men she had known before. There were no grand gifts, no name-dropping, no talk of wealth, just simple, light-hearted words that made her laugh. Over time, Amelia found herself looking forward to his visits. After her shift, Thomas often walked her to her small apartment, chatting about his life on construction sites. "It's hard work," he admitted one evening, "but there's pride in building something with your own hands, a wall, a house, knowing you left a mark." Amelia nodded, touched by his sincerity. She admired the calluses on his hands, proof of a life earned through effort. He seemed so different from the men her parents had once introduced, men who only boasted of money and status. Could Thomas be the kind of man she had been searching for? Weeks turned into months, and their connection deepened. They shared simple meals by the roadside, laughed at stories of clumsy customers, and walked under the fading glow of streetlights. For the first time, Amelia felt hope stir inside her chest. Perhaps, just perhaps, this was love. But cracks soon appeared. One evening, as they sat on a bench after dinner, Thomas sighed and rubbed his forehead. "I hate to ask you this, Amelia, but could you lend me a little money? My paycheck was delayed, and I need to cover a bill." Amelia hesitated. She had saved a little from her wages, but she remembered her vow to live simply. Still, Thomas had been kind, and his request seemed harmless. She handed him a few notes, and he smiled gratefully. "Thank you. I'll pay you back as soon as I can." She wanted to believe him, and for a while she did. But the request didn't stop. A broken tool one week, a debt to a friend the next. Always small amounts, always with an easy excuse. Amelia tried to ignore the unease building inside her. He didn't know her background, she reminded herself. He couldn't possibly be using her, could he? Yet in the quiet of her little room, doubt gnawed at her. Was Thomas truly the man who saw her for who she was, or was history repeating itself in another disguise? The weeks that followed should have been filled with joy, but Amelia felt an invisible weight pressing on her heart. Each time Thomas leaned closer with that easy smile, each time he reached for her hand, a whisper of doubt echoed in her mind. She tried to silence it, reminding herself that this was the life she had chosen, simple, honest, free of deceit. Yet the questions lingered. Why did his request for money never end? Why did his eyes sometimes carry a gleam she could not name? One quiet afternoon, Amelia finished her shift and stepped into the back alley of the diner to head home. As she rounded the corner, she froze. Thomas stood there, leaning casually against the wall, phone pressed to his ear. He hadn't seen her. His voice was low, but laced with pride. "Yeah, it's going well," he said, chuckling. "I'm close to getting more out of her. You wouldn't believe it, the daughter of Richard Walker, hiding here as if she's nobody. Imagine that. An heiress pretending to be a waitress." Amelia's heart dropped into her stomach. She gripped the edge of her apron, her breath shallow. "She's already giving me money," Thomas continued. "It won't be long before I get more. All this effort, following her here, it's paying off, trust me." The world around Amelia blurred. Every laugh they had shared, every moment she had let her guard down, came crashing back as nothing but a lie. He had known all along. From the very beginning he had seen not Amelia the woman, but Amelia the heiress. Her tears burned as she stepped forward. "So this was your plan all along?" Thomas spun around, shock flashing across his face. "Amelia, it's not what you think." "Don't," she said sharply, her voice trembling with fury. "I heard everything." He reached out as if to calm her, but she pulled back. The guilt written on his face was enough. "You knew who I was. You followed me here. And you used me, just like all the others." "Wait, please, let me explain." But Amelia shook her head, tears streaming freely now. "There's nothing to explain. You never cared for me. You only cared for what my name could give you." Without another word, she turned and walked away, her steps heavy yet determined. Behind her, Thomas's pleas faded into silence. That night, Amelia sat in her small apartment staring at her packed suitcase. The town that had once promised freedom now felt tainted by betrayal. She couldn't stay here. She couldn't breathe in a place where love had once seemed possible, but had been revealed as nothing more than another trap. She picked up her phone and called home. Her mother's worried voice filled the line. "Amelia, darling, are you all right? You haven't called in so long." "I'm fine, Mother," Amelia replied, though her voice wavered. "I just need more time. I can't come home yet. But I have to leave this place." There was a pause, then her father's steady voice cut through. "Remember, Amelia, you can always return. You don't have to face this alone." Her chest ached with gratitude. "I know, Father. But I need to keep going. I have to believe there is more than this." As dawn crept across the sky, Amelia walked away from the little apartment, suitcase in hand. Betrayed but not broken, wounded but not defeated, she carried with her a new resolve. Never again would she allow herself to be deceived. If love existed for her, it would be real, or it would not be at all. Amelia left the bustling town behind with her heart heavy from betrayal. Each turn of the bus wheel seemed to echo the words she had overheard from Thomas, words that still stung like fresh wounds. But beneath her pain, a quiet determination began to rise. She had left her life of privilege to be seen for who she was, and though her first attempt had ended in heartbreak, she would not give up. The bus rolled into a small, quiet community. The streets were simple, the houses modest, and the air filled with the laughter of children and the chatter of neighbors who all seemed to know one another. Here there were no towering buildings, no constant rush, just a slower rhythm that promised peace. Amelia found lodging in a modest room rented from a kindly widow. The space was small, its furniture worn from years of use, but it was warm and welcoming. For the first time in weeks, she felt she could breathe again. The next day, she walked through the town in search of work. Passing a small supermarket, she noticed a handwritten sign taped to the window. "Salesgirl needed." Hope flickered in her chest. She stepped inside where a middle-aged man with a kind face greeted her. "Good afternoon. I'm Paul Anderson, the owner. Can I help you?" "Yes," Amelia replied, steadying her voice. "I saw your sign. I'd like to apply for the job." Mr. Anderson studied her with curiosity. "Do you have any experience?" "I worked in a diner before," she said carefully, sticking to her story. "And I've done odd jobs here and there." Her confidence and politeness impressed him. After a few more questions, he smiled and handed her a simple apron. "You can start tomorrow. It's not glamorous, but it's honest work." Relief washed over her. "Thank you, Mr. Anderson. I won't let you down." The next morning, Amelia met Clara Moore, another salesgirl in her early 20s. Clara was bright-eyed, friendly, and eager to welcome Amelia. As they restocked shelves side by side, Clara chatted freely. "I live with my uncle and aunt," Clara shared. "They're good people, but this town feels too small for me. One day, I want to marry a wealthy man and move somewhere bigger. I want a life of luxury." Amelia smiled gently, though her heart tugged at the irony. Clara's dream was the very life Amelia had left behind. And what if wealth doesn't bring happiness?" she asked softly. Clara laughed. "Oh, it will. You'll see. Money solves everything." Amelia didn't argue. She understood Clara's longing, but she also knew the truth. Money could buy comfort, but not peace of heart. As days turned into weeks, Amelia found comfort in the simplicity of her new life. She greeted customers with warmth, stacked shelves with care, and shared light conversations with Clara. For the first time since her betrayal, she felt herself healing. Yet deep inside, Amelia knew her journey was far from over. She had escaped the shadow of Thomas, but new tests would soon come. For even in this quiet place, hearts carried desires, and not all desires were pure. The quiet village soon became familiar to Amelia. She rose early to sweep the supermarket floor, stacked tins neatly on the shelves, and greeted customers with a smile. Each evening, She returned to her small, rented room, her heart lighter than it had been in months. Life here was humble, but it was honest. And that honesty, she told herself, was worth more than all the chandeliers and silken gowns she had left behind. But peace has a way of attracting new storms. One afternoon, while Amelia stood behind the counter arranging receipts, the door swung open. In stepped a tall man with a commanding presence. His polished shoes clicked against the tiled floor, and his fitted shirt spoke of wealth not common in this village. He carried himself with confidence, almost too much of it. "Good afternoon," he said smoothly, offering a smile that seemed practiced. "I don't believe I've seen you before." Amelia returned his smile politely. "I'm new here. Just started working with Mr. Anderson." "Julian Carter," he introduced himself, handing over money for his purchase. "I own the large house just down the main road. Welcome to the village." Their interaction was brief, but in the days that followed, Julian began to appear more often. Sometimes he bought nothing more than a bottle of water, other times just a packet of sweets. But always his eyes lingered on Amelia. He asked about her day, complimented her smile, and once boldly said, "A woman like you doesn't belong behind a counter." Amelia's polite laughter masked her discomfort. She had grown cautious since her betrayal with Thomas. Compliments no longer impressed her, and wealth no longer dazzled her. Still, Julian's attention did not go unnoticed by others, least of all by Clara. Clara had long dreamed of marrying into wealth, and in this small village, Julian was the most eligible man. She often spoke about him in whispers, imagining a life in his spacious house, wearing fine clothes and leaving the small supermarket behind. But now her hopeful eyes watched as Julian's focus shifted toward Amelia. One evening after Julian left, Clara turned to Amelia, her tone light but edged. "He likes you, you know." Amelia blinked. "Who?" "Julian," Clara said quickly. "He's been coming here for you. Everyone can see it." Amelia shook her head. "I'm not interested. He seems kind, but I came here to work, not to chase attention." Clara forced a smile, but jealousy flickered in her eyes. "Well, most girls would be thrilled. He's wealthy, handsome, respected. You could have everything with him." Amelia's voice softened. "Clara, money doesn't guarantee happiness. Trust me, I know." But Clara didn't reply. That night, as Amelia walked home, she couldn't shake the feeling that her quiet friendship with Clara had begun to shift. The warmth that once connected them now carried a subtle chill. And though Amelia tried to ignore Julian's persistent visits, she knew deep inside the peace she had found in this small village was about to be tested again. The days passed, and Julian's presence grew harder to ignore. His shadow seemed to stretch across the supermarket with every visit, his confidence filling the room. Customers whispered about how often he came by, and Clara's smiles grew thinner each time. Amelia, however, remained distant, polite but guarded. She had no interest in wealth packaged as affection. One sunny afternoon, Amelia finished her shift and walked along the narrow road leading home. The village square was alive with laughter as children chased after a ball, their bare feet raising tiny clouds of dust. She smiled at the sight, reminded of simpler joys that money could never buy. Then suddenly, the ball shot into the road, flying straight toward her. Before she could react, a firm hand grabbed her arm and pulled her aside. She stumbled, falling against a broad chest. "Are you all right?" a deep voice asked, steady and calm. Amelia looked up, her breath catching. Before her stood a tall young man, his shirt damp with sweat from work, his hands rough with labor. His face carried the marks of sun and toil, yet his eyes, kind, steady, sincere, shone with warmths that pierced through her guarded heart. I think so," she stammered, still pressed against him. He quickly released her, an apologetic smile spreading across his face. "Forgive me. I didn't mean to startle you. I just didn't want you hurt." Amelia nodded, brushing off her dress. "Thank you. That was quick thinking." He extended his hand. "Adam Cole." "Amelia," she replied softly, shaking his hand. That brief encounter lingered with her long after she walked away. There was something different about Adam. Unlike Julian, whose attention felt like a performance, Adam's concern had been instinctive, genuine. In the weeks that followed, their paths crossed often by the market stalls, near the riverbank, or in the village square. Each time, their conversations grew longer. Adam told her about his work as a construction worker, about the pride he felt in earning an honest living, and about his widowed mother, whom he cared for with devotion. "I don't have much," he said one evening as they walked by the river, the setting sun painting the water in gold. "But I believe a man's worth isn't in his wealth, but in how he treats people." Amelia's heart stirred. Those words touched the very place in her soul that had long hungered for truth. She found herself opening up to him not about her hidden past, but about her love for freedom, her desire for a life untainted by pretense. With Adam, she laughed easily. With Adam, she felt seen. And with Adam, she discovered a flicker of hope she thought she had lost forever. But while her heart quietly bloomed elsewhere, envy brewed. Julian's interest in her had not faded, and Clara's bitterness deepened with every stolen glance Amelia shared with Adam. Jealousy had begun to weave its dangerous thread. Amelia's bond with Adam blossomed quietly like a flower in hidden soil. They met often by chance at the riverbank where children played, at the market stalls where women haggled, or on evening walks when the air was cool. Their conversations flowed easily, filled with laughter, dreams, and moments of silence that spoke louder than words. For the first time, Amelia felt safe in someone's presence. But not everyone celebrated her newfound joy. Julian Carter watched from a distance, his jaw tightening each time he saw Adam beside her. He, the wealthiest man in the village, had always believed women would naturally gravitate toward him. His fine house, his polished car, his commanding presence all had made him the center of attention. Yet Amelia, the newcomer, dared to ignore his advances, and instead chose the company of a construction worker. One afternoon, Julian called Clara aside. They stood in a quiet corner of the supermarket, out of Mr. Anderson's earshot. His voice was low, laced with frustration. "Clara, you've seen it too. Amelia spends far too much time with that man, Adam. He has nothing, no wealth, no status. She deserves better. She deserves me." Clara's heart twisted. She had long dreamed of being noticed by Julian, but now he spoke of Amelia with a hunger that stung. Still, envy pushed her to nod. "What do you want me to do?" "Talk to her," Julian urged. "Convince her. She respects you. Make her see that I'm the better choice." That evening, after closing the shop, Clara walked home with Amelia. Her smile seemed forced, her voice unusually serious. "Amelia," she began, "I need to tell you something as a friend. You're making a mistake with Adam." Amelia frowned. "Why do you say that?" Clara stopped walking, crossing her arms. "Because he has nothing to offer you. Look at him, a poor construction worker. You're beautiful, intelligent, and you could have so much more. Julian is wealthy, respected, and he wants you. Any girl in this village would give anything to be in your place. Why throw that away?" Amelia's heart tightened, but she stood tall. "Clara, I've lived with wealth. I've seen its emptiness. Money cannot buy kindness. It cannot buy honesty. And with Adam, I feel something real. I will not trade that for riches." Clara's forced smile faltered, replaced by envy flashing in her eyes. "So you would choose a man with calloused hands over one who could give you the world?" "Yes, Amelia said firmly, her voice calm but resolute. Because love is not measured by the size of a house or the weight of a pocket, but by the sincerity of a heart. They walked in silence the rest of the way, but Clara's thoughts churned darkly. To her, Amelia wasn't just rejecting Julian. She was also crushing Clara's own fragile dreams. And as Julian's pride burned hotter and Clara's jealousy deepened, Amelia unknowingly found herself at the center of a storm ready to break. The days that followed grew tense, though Amelia tried to ignore the undercurrents around her. She focused on her work at the supermarket, on her evening walks with Adam, on the simple joy of being seen for who she was. But whispers had begun to circle the village. Some said Julian Carter was angry at being spurned. Others noticed Clara's smile had soured, her tone sharper whenever Amelia's name was mentioned. Julian's pride burned like a fire. He was a man who had always won in business, in respect, in admiration. To lose to Adam, a laborer, felt like an insult he could not bear. One evening, seated in his lavish living room, he clenched his fist. "She'll see reason," he muttered. "I'll make sure of it." Clara, too, battled her envy. She had once looked at Amelia as a friend, even admired her quiet strength. But now, every time she saw Amelia smile at Adam, bitterness swelled inside her. Why should Amelia, the newcomer, have what Clara had long dreamed of? Together, Julian and Clara's frustrations fused into a plan. The next day, Clara cornered Amelia after work. Her tone was sharp, her eyes glinting with something Amelia had never seen before. "Why are you being so stubborn? Julian is offering you a life most women would pray for, and yet you cling to Adam, a man with nothing." Amelia's voice trembled, but she stood firm. "Clara, what you call nothing is everything to me. With Adam, I have peace. With Adam, I am myself. Wealth cannot replace that." Unbeknownst to them, Adam had walked into the shop just in time to hear Amelia's words. His heart stirred not with pride, but with awe. For the first time in his life, someone had chosen him not despite his simplicity, but because of it. Julian, however, was not ready to let go. Later that evening, he approached Amelia directly. His tone was smooth, but his eyes were cold. "Amelia, you're making a mistake. Adam cannot give you security. With me, you'll never worry about a thing. Think carefully. A woman like you belongs beside a man of status." Amelia met his gaze without flinching. "Mr. Carter, I appreciate your interest, but my heart is not for sale. It belongs where it feels at home, and that is not with you." The words struck Julian like a slap. His jaw tightened, and for a moment, his mask of charm cracked. "You'll regret this," he muttered, before turning away. That night, as Amelia walked home under the pale glow of the moon, she felt the weight of unseen eyes watching her. The village, once peaceful, no longer felt safe. She clutched her bag tighter, whispering a silent prayer. The storm had broken. Choices had been made. And though Amelia's heart rested firmly with Adam, she knew the cost of defying pride and envy was far from paid. The air in the village grew heavy after Amelia's bold rejection of Julian. People whispered in corners, wondering what he might do next. Some admired Amelia's courage, others pitied her for defying the wealthiest man in town. Clara, meanwhile, simmered with envy, her bitterness eroding what remained of their friendship. One evening, Amelia walked home after her shift. The road was unusually quiet, the sky painted with the last traces of sunset. Suddenly, Clara stepped out from the shadows. Her arms were folded, her eyes sharp. "You think you're better than all of us," Clara spat. "You think choosing Adam makes you noble? No, it just makes you foolish. You've thrown away a life of comfort. Women like me would give anything for the chance you rejected." Amelia's voice was calm but firm. Clara, you don't understand. I didn't reject comfort. I rejected emptiness. What you're chasing won't give you peace. Believe me, I've lived it. Clara's face twisted with pain, jealousy bleeding into her words. Then you'll suffer for it. Before Amelia could reply, another figure approached Julian. His polished shoes crunched against the gravel as he stepped forward, his expression dark. Amelia, he said coldly, this foolishness ends tonight. You belong with me. You will see reason, or I'll make sure you regret crossing me. Amelia's heart pounded, but before fear could overwhelm her, Adam appeared, walking quickly toward them. He placed himself between Amelia and Julian, his stance steady and protective. She's already made her choice, Adam said firmly. And it isn't you. Julian sneered. And what can you give her, laborer? Calloused hands and an empty wallet? She'll tire of you. Adam's eyes did not waver. I may not have wealth, but I have honesty. I may not have power, but I have love. And those are things your money will never buy. The quiet dignity in his voice silenced even Clara for a moment. Villagers, drawn by the commotion, began to gather. Murmurs rose in the crowd as they listened. Amelia stepped forward, her voice ringing clear. Julian, I am not a prize to be bought, and Clara, I am not your enemy. I came here to live simply, to be seen as myself, not as the daughter of Richard Walker, not as an heiress, just Amelia. And for the first time in my life, Adam has given me that gift. He sees me for who I am, not for what I own. That is why I choose him. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some villagers whispered in shock at her revelation, realizing at last who she truly was, but more nodded in quiet admiration. Julian's pride, however, could not withstand the weight of public rejection. His face flushed with rage, but the crowd's eyes pressed in on him. He turned sharply and walked away, his dignity shattered. Clara, trembling with shame, lowered her head and slipped into the darkness. In that moment, Amelia felt a weight lift from her shoulders. For years she had been defined by her family's fortune, by others' expectations. But now, in the middle of a humble village square, she had chosen her own path. Adam took her hand gently. You don't have to hide anymore, he said softly. Tears welled in her eyes, but this time they were tears of joy. No, she whispered. I don't. As the crowd slowly dispersed, Amelia stood hand in hand with Adam, her heart lighter than it had ever been. She had lost friends, endured betrayal, and faced envy, but in the end, she had gained something far greater. Not just love, but freedom. Not just companionship, but truth. And for Amelia Walker, that was worth more than all the riches in the world.